Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. If you guys watched the previous episodes, a couple back, we have been compiling our all-time starting lineups for offense, special teams, and now this is our defensive video. If I forgot to mention, I'm James Haskell, here as always with my co-host Glenn Martin, and I'm excited to talk about the defensive side of the ball, and we want to make sure you guys are able to participate and stay up to date as well as these come out, so make sure to subscribe. So that way you can stay up to date on these. But as far as the defensive side of the ball goes, a lot of you would probably think, why don't we just start the 2000 defense and call it good? But we got some other names in there as well. So it's definitely going to be an eventful show. Glenn, why don't you talk about the parameters, like how many people we've slotted in each position and stuff like that, and then we'll let you kick it off with your list.
Yeah, so basically the way we set this up is – we didn't want to do it for just one game, but we also didn't want to do it for a whole season. So we're as if we're approaching a playoff run. So the regular season has just wrapped up. The Ravens have secured the number 1 overall seed, so they're looking to win 3 games and bring this title back to Baltimore. So we kept, we didn't do a full roster, but we did keep 2 outside linebackers, 2 inside, 4 corners, 2 D ends, 2 D tackles, and then 2 safeties. So, and then also we wanted to put in a special teams contributor, but not one that touches the ball, one that is just for kickoff and punt coverage, because we included a return specialist in our offense. So it's only right that we return or have a cover guy on our defensive side. So, where would you like to start, Jimbo? What position?
I say we go with the big boys up front. We start with D.
Slobber knockers.
That's right. We start with D tackle.
Okay.
You want me to kick it off?
Yeah, what you got?
All right, so we went with 2 D tackles. I'm going to give you both of them here. I got the bow-legged Kelly Gregg, Mr. Fire Hydrant himself, always in the backfield. And, of course, the guy that we currently have on our team, Brandon Williams. I love Kelly Gregg because, he was always making hay in the backfield and wreaking havoc. I think that you've referred to this before, in some of our other shows, but like inside of a phone booth, the dude was just nasty. His hands were of other world, and his grip and his hands ability was great. So Kelly Gregg, really skilled player. I think he is sorely underrated outside of the Ravens franchise and by recent like bandwagon fans. But no, and then Brandon Williams is what he is. So I think he's one of the best run stoppers in the league, really good at his job and super athletic. So those are my 2 guys. Who you got?
Yeah, well, our list does not vary on this one. I have the exact same 2, and I think what's pretty incredible about a guy like Kelly Gregg is that, typically when you think about the defensive tackle position, you think about a guy who takes double teams. You think about a guy who does the dirty work but doesn't necessarily pick up the stats along with it. But that's really not the case for Kelly Gregg. I mean, we know how good Brandon Williams is, but his best year was 2015 when he had 53 total tackles and 2 sacks. But he's had years where he's only had 30 total tackles and 34 total tackles in a full 16-game schedule. Now, we know as Baltimore fans, excuse me, that he brings more to the table than just tackles, and that's why we like him. But let me just let you know what Kelly Gregg was doing from that exact same position, a position in which you're not supposed to be able to acquire or accumulate stats. His best year, he had 84 total tackles. So he had an 84 total tackle year, an 80 tackle year. He had consistently had 3 sacks across, a bunch of years. So he was able to put up numbers despite being in that position, and that's what I find incredible. I know his wrestling background certainly helped. His ability to always be lower than the guy across from him and have that leverage, I think, really helped make him into a great player. And, it's just incredible the numbers he was able to put up from that interior defensive line position. But, that's enough about the slobber knockers. Well, I guess we got to go to the outside. So these guys are pretty darn big too.
Yeah.
But we picked 2 D ends, and this one was kind of interesting because with the Ravens defense, they've run 2 different kind of schools of thought or schemes rather. They ran the traditional 4-3 scheme for a while when they had Saragusa, Adams, and they were protecting guys like Ray Lewis. But then more recently, they moved to a 3-4 scheme. So when you think D end, you don't always think this first guy, but as a 3-4 D end, he was unbelievable, and that's Haloti Ngata. So I know we all remember him, but some people might just assume he was a D tackle or a nose guard. But he played 3-4 D end for us, and he was absolutely dominant. So I got to put Haloti as my number 1 D end, narrowly beating out my number 2 guy, which is Michael McCrary, which I think a lot of younger fans forget what that guy brought to us. But let me just pull up a couple of his numbers because, wow, this guy put up numbers, man. I mean, so his sack totals, he had 9, then 14.5, then 11.5, and then 6.5, 7.5, and then 2. But he had just an incredible impact on our defense. He helped us win that Super Bowl. The guy was playing with a cast on his arm, brings incredible toughness and just that nasty that I know you like, Jimmy, from defensive guys and I guess offensive as well. But so to me, Michael McCrary and Haloti Ngata are going to be my DNs going into a playoff run. Who do you got?
Yeah, same 2 guys. No surprise there, as I'm sure you can understand, and as well as all of our listeners and viewers, it makes total sense here. If there's anyone that you guys think that we left out, we'd like to know your argument here. But I think that these were 2 pretty easy picks. I will say, maybe go out on a limb here, but Haloti sneakily might have been the most athletic D lineman we've ever had, based on his size and mobility. I mean, you talked about this before, but there's videos of him playing rugby back in the day, and dude can move. I'll never forget when he destroyed Robert Griffin III. Robert Griffin was accustomed to sidestepping big guys and moving out of their way. He had never met Haloti Ngata before. It was not going to happen.
Yeah, him and Brandon Williams, as far as athleticism, Brandon Williams was walking on his hands like 50 yards at 350 and benching 500 and some pounds, so.
Yeah, no, that's true. So shout out to Chuckarama Buffet, who built Haloti Ngata, body built by Chuckarama. Great buffet in Salt Lake City, and Haloti loved that place. So a shout out to that place. But yeah, so those are my same 2 guys. Let's go to outside linebacker. And like you said, Glenn, I mean, it was interesting when we were compiling our list because you and I went back and forth a lot about the distinction between DN, outside linebacker, trying to figure out how we're going to do this because we had, schematically we've switched, throughout the years. So we wanted to go with as pure outside linebackers as possible. Obviously, this wasn't a super hard list either, but it's important to make that distinction at least. So my 2 guys, not surprising, Terrell Suggs, Sizzle, and Peter Boulware. All right, like I love Peter Boulware's last name because to me he looked like a bull. Who's that cartoon bull? Ferdinand or something like that? Ferdinand or whatever. He had that big head and he just was nasty. And yeah, Peter Boulware was awesome. I think he is forgotten in Ravens history as well because he was overshadowed by a lot of big names on that defense. But dude was a thoroughbred. I mean, he was incredible. And yeah, so those are my 2 guys, far and above Peter Boulware and obviously our sack leader who I think doubles the person. Yeah, Terrell Suggs has 132 sacks as a Raven, and Peter Boulware, who's in second, I think only has 70. So almost double our second place sack leader all time. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, Suggs. I mean, people got to remember when Suggs came in, he was the youngest player in the league when he entered the league. So, and he stuck around for a long time and might suit him up for one more year this upcoming season. We're not sure where he's going to be, but he might just put up. Well, I think it's his 19th year or something like that. I think he spent 17 with Baltimore. So yeah, my list is the same. Boy, I don't like that we had the same list up front, but I have a feeling it's going to change here soon when we get back to the secondary. But yeah, I mean, Suggs, first ballot Hall of Famer. Boulware spent, I think, 7 seasons with it, or no, 8. Spent 8 seasons with us. And, we all know what Suggs brought to the table. So I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on Boulware since he's a little bit forgotten, I'd say, in Baltimore in some ways. But in his first season in 97, he had 11.5 sacks. 98, he had 8.5. 99, he had 10. 2000, he had 7 sacks. But in 2001, he had 15 sacks. Incredible numbers. And then 7 sacks, 8.5. So he put up big numbers while he was with us, and he was always a fan favorite. So Peter Boulware to me is a no doubt about it. And if Suggs isn't on your list, then you're absolutely crazy. So we had to agree there. But this next position, I think I knew who number 1 is on both of us, but I'll be interested to see who you got at number 2. Inside linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. There is only one, and I don't know if you're starting an NFL list at inside linebacker, I don't know if you have anyone else at number 1 other than Ray Lewis. I don't care what team you're doing it for. He's got to be the top of the NFL list at inside linebacker, in my opinion. Doesn't get any more impactful for a city than Mr. Ray Lewis. He's as good as it gets. I mean, what hasn't he done in his career? I don't know if anyone's done more from an individual accolade and team accomplishment standpoint than Ray Lewis. So he's definitely number 1, no doubt about it. But my number 2 guy is a guy that I was pretty sad to see leave in free agency, a guy that just didn't seem like he got to write the rest of his story in Baltimore. It was like it was cut short, in my opinion. That's, of course, C.J. Mosley, who's a great player and a guy that I was, like I said, very sad to see leave. But, I mean, I guess if the Jets want to make him the highest paid player, it's kind of hard to match that. But he spent 5 seasons here, and the guy was incredible. He's exactly what we expected when he was drafted, that high a pick, and he lived up to the hype. The guy, multi-time Pro Bowler, made big plays in coverage as well, which I think a lot of fans kind of sleep on his coverage ability, but because he wasn't the fastest, and I understand that. But he was able to understand coverages, and he made big-time interceptions in big-time moments, and I'll never forget that. So C.J. Mosley's my number 2 inside linebacker. Jimbo, who's on your list? I know who one of them is.
Yeah, well, obviously, of course, number 52, the number 52. But the one thing I want to say about CJ really quickly is you're absolutely right. We started to notice last year there was a couple times where inside linebackers couldn't get far back enough or, couldn't get the depth enough based on instincts or lack of athleticism to where CJ, the ball floated over their head and CJ would have been there and at least got a fingertip on it because we've seen him do that a number of times. So you're absolutely right. I underappreciated him and his coverage skills, but you're right. They stood out like a sore thumb last year. And we really noticed that a number of times where I remember you and I both thinking CJ would have made that play.
Yeah.
So I'd agree with you, but when you get more guaranteed money than a quarterback,
crazy.
So no, but my second guy, I think you'll be happy to hear this because it's the guy right over your left shoulder, the Mr. Bart Scott, Mr. CBS, Mr. Organized Chaos. I loved that time period of the Ravens while, we had some great seasons. We didn't win a chip around that time, but the defenses were just nasty, hard-nosed. Bart Scott, the thing I love about him, undrafted guy, worked for everything he had, really nasty player and had a lot of grit. I think he was Baltimore. I mean, he just was. Every time he hit you, you knew it. And, leave dents on people's bodies. So Bart Scott next to Ray Lewis is one scary crew.
Yeah, no doubt. And the thing I'll always remember about Bart Scott, when I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to go on like a tour of the stadium and got to go down the field and do a little Q&A also with a couple of former Ravens. And I'm blanking on their names right now. I believe I know one was a D tackle, but I can't remember exactly who the players were. But I remember I asked who the hardest hitter was on the team, and without hesitation, both of them said Bart Scott. And they meant as far as consistency of hitting. Every time he hit you, you felt it. So yeah, and obviously he had one heck of a year. So he was with us for quite some time. But let me just highlight one year that he had because it was incredible. He started all 16 games. He had 103 total tackles. He had 9.5 sacks, Jimbo. Bart Scott. And he had 2 picks.
Spot.
Yeah, so I mean, just an incredible player, a guy that could blitz, a guy that could certainly be your stonewall against the run. And he was a leader. I mean, he was an emotional leader. Put him next to Ray. I mean, he'd get you. Them two would get you to run through walls. So the guy, and he's pretty darn good on TV too. So yeah, I like Bart Scott. He didn't make my list, but I respect I respect you putting him on your list. All right, so let's go to safety next because we decided to go with two safeties. Now, when we were talking about this before the show, we were kind of undecided on whether we should go with a true strong safety and a true free. I mean, obviously Ed Reed is going to be on our list as our free safety regardless. There's no other player that can make that list. But we didn't know if we should go with a true strong safety or just the two best safeties because let's be honest, if you had two of the best safeties in our history, you're not going to go, well, let's get rid of that guy because he didn't technically play strong every position. But look, these guys can do anything. Ed Reed could have played strong safety his whole career and been a Hall of Famer. Okay, so these guys can do it all. But yeah, so I kind of let the cat out of the bag. Ed Reed, by far, definitely going to be our free safety for both of our team. First ballot Hall of Famer, incredible player, great leader. He's the best. So I got to go with him. But my second guy, although he only spent a short period of time with the Ravens, Rod Woodson was integral on the Super Bowl winning team back in 2000. Man, this pop-up will not go away. He only spent 3 years here, but they were impactful. The guy made plays, obviously. Now there was a lot to choose from in this role because, man, I remember Bernard Pollard knocking out the running back for New England. What was his name? I'm blanking on his name right now, but yeah, I mean, I remember Tony Jefferson coming in and being a heck of a player for a long time. I'm blanking on some guys, but put it this way. Rod Woodson was too good to be left off the list, even in his short period of time here. So who do you got at safety to back up or to pair next to Ed Reed?
You know, I'm sad that you just put Ed Reed in there automatically. He's not on my list.
Yeah, right.
But the other name I think you were missing was, I mean, as far as strong safety goes, Juwan Landry had some good years here too.
Yes.
And talking about laying the wood, dude.
Yeah.
Wood. I mean, my gosh. So, but my other guy is the same as that guy's years. Rod Woodson has to be in there. I mean, he was, like you said, not a long tenure, but his impact was profound. And I mean, the guy is just a Hall of Fame. Why would I not put both Hall of Famers back there?
I mean, he's played only 4 years here, but 16 games in all 4 years. He had 6 picks, 7, 4, and then 3.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, consistent, you know. Yeah, I mean, you got to have him on the list.
To think about the fact that I almost put Eric Weddle in there, and this is no knock to Eric Weddle, but like I think in the 3 years he had 3 interceptions with the Ravens.
Yeah.
Just to look at the numbers and compare them to Rod Woodson.
It's not close. And, you know, I just want to shout out a couple guys who had short stints but were important at the safety spot. Corey Graham, incredible the time he was here. He made that interception off Peyton Manning to really seal the Mile High Miracle because a lot of people just assumed that Mile High Miracle was the game-winning play, but it wasn't. That just got him into overtime. And then Corey Graham had the big interception on Peyton Manning in overtime that set up the game-winning score. So, yeah, he was big time. And then a huge fan favorite that I think everybody was upset that I believe left when Rex left, if I remember correctly, is Jim Leonard, who was big time for the Ravens for a very brief time, but could help in the return game as well as help on defense. So a lot of good safeties in Baltimore, but yeah, these two are the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on. I know that I'm certain that we have differences here as far as the cornerback room goes. And one of the things I want to point out that I think is interesting as far as our defense goes, I think we've both gone a more old school. Like I think the years in which these guys played was further back than our offense.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, but no surprise. But so we left with we kept 4 cornerbacks.
Yep.
And so I'm just going to give you my 4, and you can tear it apart if you want. Tell me I'm wrong, but I already know I'm right. So, all right. So Chris McAllister, still one of the most physically dominant corners I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Here for a long time. Dwayne Starks, his partner in crime, really impactful. Had some great numbers as far as interceptions go. Played really well in big moments. So anyway, I mean, to me, he makes the list easily, Dwayne Starks. The other two, though, say what you want, but if I'm starting a playoff run right now, Marlon Humphrey has to be on my list. He has to be one of my corners.
Okay.
And Marley's done in these what Marlon's done in these few years has just been impressive. His progression has been impressive. I still think that he's underrated. Still. And then my number 4, the most controversial on the list because he has been with the Ravens for 11 games or something like that.
Oh no.
I'm going the ultimate gambler, but Marcus Peters is in rare air when you're talking about getting his hands on the football at the cornerback position, and not just for a Raven, in the NFL, period. And that's what it's about, generating turnovers. I know there's times when he's gotten burnt, he doesn't look great, things like that. But the dude gets his hands on the football. And, the ability to do that, to bait quarterbacks is something that sometimes I don't think you can teach. You got to have great instincts for it. And he's one of those people. So those are my 4 if I'm starting a playoff run right now.
Well, as much as I like Peters, and you're right, I mean, he's only been in the league. Let me just say this. He's only been in the league 5 years. 5 years, Jimmy. He's got 27 interceptions. He's got 6 touchdowns. He's got 27 interceptions, Jimmy, in 5 years.
Oh, my gosh.
In 5 years, in his last 5 years, Weddle, I think, had 4. 27. I mean, it's insane. But while I do say that, he did not make my list. He just hasn't been on the Ravens long enough. And if we're going on just the Ravens' merit, as good a season as he had last year, he only spent 11 games. You mentioned it. Only 11 games is not long enough to make my list. So I, of course, have Chris McAllister. You mentioned him. He's the best corner in the history of the franchise. But maybe not for long, because my other guy is Marlon Humphrey as well. And I think Marlon's quick on his heels, and if he ends up signing a long-term extension, I believe Marlon will eventually surpass McAllister as the best corner in the franchise's history. And I agree with you also. I had Dwayne Starks in here. I think he was a key to helping us win our first Super Bowl, and also a key to make that the best defense of all time in 2000. And so I can't disagree there. But this is where we disagree. How you don't have Jimmy Smith on your team blows my mind. I mean, good. Look, was he an All-Pro? He wasn't an All-Pro, but he spent 9 years in Baltimore. When he's healthy and not suspended, because he's had a couple issues, when he's healthy and not suspended, the guy is one of the top corners in the league. There was a time period there where he was playing as a top, 1, 2, or 3 corner in the league. The guy, he's just an incredible teammate. I mean, I don't know how you don't put him on the list when he's healthy. Now, again, we're talking healthy here. This isn't, this list is assuming health, of course. And when he's healthy, the contributions he's made to the team, to me, outweigh those made by Peters, just because Peters is brief. 11 games isn't big enough to me. 9 years, 11 games. I mean, I got to go Jimmy and be loyal to my guy. But we did just extend Peters, so we'll see how long Jimmy stays on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I think that the issue I have with Jimmy is he's almost a product of his own potential. Not a product. It's a detriment to him that his potential was so high and he's been so riddled by injury that even though he's had years where he's been, in that Pro Bowl status and definitely has an above average career, if you take all the ups and the downs, he's definitely an above average corner. But my expectations of him were so high because I feel like when Jimmy came out, he was not one of the first, but it was more rare back then to see a guy with his size at corner. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting more corners that are over 6 foot and that are a little bit bigger and stuff like that, longer. But I feel like back then, Jimmy coming in, he's 6'2", I think.
Yeah, and long.
Yeah, and he's not skinny. I mean, the dude is he's got some shoulders on him, got some arms on. So I think that he, to me, at least in my eyes, he was looked at a little bit more of a guy that could end up being a perennial Pro Bowler. Year after year after year after year. And so I get it. It wasn't easy for me to leave him off, but Peter's splash plays just make me think of Ed Reed, and it gets me all warm and fuzzy inside. So,
yeah, I mean, if I was starting a franchise, I'd probably have to agree with you and take Peter. I mean, his ability to get his hands on the ball from that position is just it's almost unreal. Like it's almost not even it's not fair how he can get his hands on the ball at a cornerback position. It's incredible. I mean, typically safeties get those kind of like Hall of Fame safeties put up those kinds of numbers, not corners. I mean, they just don't usually get the opportunity. It's like, how does he do it? He's so good at baiting and taking the ball away. Yeah, it's incredible, but he hasn't been doing it long enough, not in purple. All right, so last position we had to do was the special teams contributor. And again, this is just for coverage teams, punt and kickoff coverage. And to me, I had to go with CoCap. I had to go with Mr. Anthony Levine Sr. The guy's been a leader on our team for quite some time. He's been a gunner. He's been a punt protector. He's been our leading tackle guy on kickoff coverage. He's done a lot, and he's also been pretty darn good. Even though we're not counting in this list, he's been pretty darn good at that dime linebacker position as of late. And so Anthony Levine is also what he does in the locker room in the off season. To me, he's a Raven, true and true. What? I don't know. He's incredible. So I got to go with Anthony Levine as my special teams contributor.
I think it's through and through, right?
There it is. Jimbo, that's why I keep you around, Jimbo.
Right. No, I can totally understand that one. I'm going with the Dailies Thomas because he's just a freak. I mean, a guy that size that can play outside linebacker, D end. Yeah, you can even throw him inside on the D line if you're getting desperate.
Play safety.
Yeah, and then he can turn around and play safety and then play gunner on special teams.
Yeah, I mean, he was a heck of a.
Now it's illegal, right? But like to double team the guy or whatever.
The wedge and all that stuff, yeah.
I have visions of him just like pushing little cornerbacks out of the way, like, goodbye. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's a scary – what was he, 265 coming down as a gunner? I mean, that's just – normally it's a corner. It's a safety. It's a young wide out who, but it's never a 265-pound linebacker. But it was for that brief time. I mean, he didn't do it very long because he made himself so useful on defense that you couldn't just keep running. But man, when he was there, that's a scary sight coming down.
Yeah, he was Isaiah Simmons before Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah, and bigger.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I think that both of our picks you can't argue with a ton. I'd tell you what, Anthony Levine would be tickled pink to know he's on an all-time list for something.
Hey man, he's a Raven.
That's
that
right.
Guy. I hope he never signs a 1 year, last year deal with some other team because I'd like to see him be a Raven all the way through his career because he's a Raven.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we want to know what your guys' thoughts are. Did we leave anyone off? Did we miss anyone? Is there anyone that you guys think, Dominique Foxworth, should he have made the list? Matt Elam, should he have made the list?
Stop it.
Let us know what your guys' thoughts are. Give us some names we left out. Who do you agree with? I think that Glenn and I had pretty much the same list except for the cornerback room. Would you take Marcus Peters? Take Jimmy Smith? Let us know what your thoughts are. Make sure to subscribe somewhere around here, and we will talk to you guys soon.
See you.